In Protestant Scotland in 1590, King James, who is probably best known for the King James Bible, was already very interested in witch trials based on his reading about the events in Germany at the time. He traveled to the European mainland to get married to Anne of Denmark, but on their return to Scotland they experienced terrible storms that forced them to shelter in Norway for several weeks. When the Danish finance minister accused the admiral of the Royal Navy of under-equipping the ships, Admiral Peter Monk defended himself by saying the storm was the result of witchcraft. A woman by the name of Anne Coldings was already in prison in Copenhagen after being found guilty on an unrelated witchcraft allegation and was awaiting execution. Admiral Monk asked the mayor of Copenhagen to interrogate her for the storm as well, and unsurprisingly, while being tortured, she confessed. Coldings was executed by burning in July 1590, and 5 other women she named while being tortured were also arrested. As a result, eventually 12 women in addition to Coldings were executed, at least 2 of which being burned alive. King James, hearing all of this once he arrived in Scotland, decided to set up his own tribunal there. As a result of this inquiry, more than 100 suspected witches were arrested in the North Berwick area. Agnes Sampson, a respected elderly healer and midwife from the village of Humble, was one of those accused but refused to confess. As a result, she was tortured. Her head and body hair were shaved, as it was believed witches would have a, quote, privy mark, as where, quote, the devil doth lick them with his tongue in some private part of their body, before he doth receive them into service. She was fastened to the wall of her cell with a torture device known as the scold's bridle, an iron instrument with 4 sharp prongs, which are forced in the victim's mouth so that the 2 prongs press against the tongue and 2 others against the cheek. She was not allowed to sleep. A London publication of the time reported that she was constricted, quote, with a rope according to the custom of that country, being a pain most grievous, which she continued almost an hour, during which time she would not confess to anything until the devil's mark was found upon her privates, and then she immediately confessed to whatsoever was demanded of her, and justifying those persons aforesaid be notorious witches. Her confession was used in 53 separate indictments against herself and others, and as a result she was convicted, strangled, and burned as a witch. King James went on to write a book entitled Daemonology, where he argued that the torture-driven confessions were successful outcomes where the truth of demonic corruption was exposed. At least one Scottish historian estimates that between 3,000 and 4,000 accused witches were executed in Scotland between 1560 and 1707. When James took the English throne on the death of Queen Elizabeth, an English law was enacted that called for the death penalty in cases where harm by magic could be proven. History is awkward.